Continue on in our introduction of entrepreneurship. Now, for your final project teams, you are allowed to bring in people from the outside if you think it'll help you, but be careful about your head count. So we started talking about entrepreneurs and their ideas, but we need a path forward. So we're going to talk about maps today and a bunch of different models that people use for entrepreneurship. One thing to keep in mind, only 1 in 4 CEOs ever make it to the end. Basically, as your company grows, your requirements grow, and you have to grow with your company. If you don't, then you're out. Because investors, they have lots of friends who could be CEOs, and they're just itching to replace you. So I actually had a class about this. It was called Scaling Entrepreneurial Leadership, where I talked about what are you going to face as a CEO. I think they killed the class anyway. But what it kind of comes down to is if you could see the road ahead, then you can be successful. Self-efficacy. The thing is, innovative products are unknown elements. And so you need to go out there and do your own intelligence. But most products die due to poor marketing. So you have to subject your ideas to rigor, be agile, and pivot when necessary. However, T.J. Rogers, who is actually a classmate of my advisor at Stanford, he said, it's all about blocking and tackling, that everybody talks about their great strategies, but nobody really talks about execution. And that's the key thing in entrepreneurship. The thing about entrepreneurship is it's a balancing act and it's contradictions. Like somebody says, rule with an iron hand, but it's all about people. Experience wins, but youth is the key. So what is it? Entrepreneurship asks you to use every single discipline in business. That's why it's fun. It's complex. However, you still have to count on your inner wisdom. It is still all on you to decide what to do with these contradictions and which way to go. Around the world, entrepreneurship is pretty interesting. The Asian nations haven't focused on entrepreneurship. What they focused on are industrial policies, that there are certain things that they invest in and make it a strength. That's why memory chips are made in South Korea. That was one of their primary focuses. And China has an industrial policy. That's why they're big in shipbuilding and construction right now. And Japan is lagging. They've had a bunch of financial issues for decades. India is recognizing that in order to pull themselves up, they need to create new businesses. So they have a startup initiative there. Russia tried $3.5 billion innovation city. They were going to copy Silicon Valley. The problem is nobody wanted to move in there. And why would you, turn down a free facility? Well, it's because in the Russian culture, the czars and Putin and everybody else, the dictators, you don't trust them. Because if they give you something, it's going to cost you something. So they're like, nope, we're good. If I want to start a business, I'll do it another way. The Middle East is planning for the end of oil. These people are not stupid. They know oil is going to run out in about 60 years. And so they're planning for the next thing. They fund 9 chairs at Stanford. And what that means is that research at Stanford has to go back to Saudi Arabia. Africa focuses on social entrepreneurship. In terms of growth, jobs, and innovative offerings, Colombia and Chile are actually the best countries for that. And they create a culture of entrepreneurship. For example, in this country, you go bankrupt, your life is wrecked for 7 years. In those countries, if you go bankrupt, your life is wrecked for 3 years. So people are more willing to take chances. You hear a lot about ecosystems for entrepreneurship. Naturally, there has to be something that nurtures it. You need the knowledge base. You need legal support for it. Do you have the culture for it? One thing you have to say about the United States is we're the greatest entrepreneurial country in the world. Because that's what we were founded on. Immigrants coming here. And the American dream was that if you willing to work hard and pull yourself up by your bootstraps, you could do anything here. What's public policy? Are there resources available to you? And is there something, some business context that helps support this? Silicon Valley rises and falls. One thing about the valley is they said the valley will never fall because some new technology will come along. And it all started with Fred Terman, who was head of the electrical engineering department at Stanford. And he encouraged two of his students, Hewlett and Packard, to start their own company. Problem is Hewlett and Packard started a very successful company, but nobody wanted to leave. So that didn't start out creating entrepreneurship. World War II came along. World War II helped make Stanford through research. And then Terman, who became provost, focused on entrepreneurship. William Shockley, Nobel Prize winner, did all of semiconductor physics. Incredibly smart man, but also a big SOB. The man was, he was a total racist. He became an embarrassment to the university. He was an embarrassment to his family. He believed that anybody with an IQ under 90 should be sterilized. And he went off to form his own semiconductor company. The one thing Shockley didn't know was talent. And he was super paranoid, so he's like tapping people's phones and things like this. Well, what ended up happening is those traitorous eight quit, and that's why I called them the traitorous eight. But they became the foundation of Silicon Valley. Then what happens, disk drives come around, pharma emerges, and Don Hoffler comes up with the name Silicon Valley. Then the ARPANET becomes the internet, .com became the gold rush, and now we're in the web mobile and also not only web mobile, but the AI age. Kleiner, Eugene Kleiner, was part of that group. He started the first major VC firm and now you've got tons of VC firms on Sand Hill Road. The Homebrew Computer Club. That's how Jobs and Wozniak met. And they created a computer that really did change the world. And 70% of all the firms can trace their lineage somewhere back to the traitorous eight. Entrepreneurship became a gold rush, and now it's cooled off. But as you can see, just about every program at every school in the country has an entrepreneurship program right now. Of course, they're different due to varying degrees. The thing is, you lose battles due to poor strategy, lack of intelligence, or poor self-assessment. So naturally, chance favors the prepared mind. And this was the point to why Professor Chavez came up with his map, because he believed that this was the proper way to build a company. Now, you don't need to exactly follow this, but the ideas and the concepts are important. And all at MIT believed it started with an idea and then moved on to people and work it on up. Blank believed you discover customers and then have your customers validate it for you. And if it's not working, find something new. Focus on finding those customers before launching it. But the problem is that works well for software, but not hardware. Reese, it's about build, measure, learn, that this is the process. And Reese is very big about pivots, that if something's wrong, keep pivoting. The problem is, are you pivoting or are you just putting off the inevitable? But your startup is a hypothesis and experiment. It's a vision. Okay, to give you a little mental break from all of this, fun facts. About 10 to 20% of all U.S. power outages are due to squirrels. Here's a video for you to watch from the series Silicon Valley, which is a hoot. And also another one for you to watch from Rocky. So pivot is when you take a course correction. However, a pivot's got to be based on new information. You just can't pivot because things aren't going well or things aren't right. What is it that's driving that pivot? And it pretty much comes down to your 3 pillars. You could pivot on any one of those. On the road is you start out with an idea, and then you raise money from your family, and then you hit the ditch of death, meaning you don't have money to do it. So you borrow it, you make an alpha, then you hit the valley of death. All of a sudden this alpha costs so much money, you can't make it to the beta. And so you have to raise significant funds to get in here. A lot of people who go into Shark Tank are in the valley of death, and they're not going to get out of it. And so you have to plan for the valley of death. And everybody shows these nice smooth curves. No, that's not what it's like. You try some things, they work and they don't work, and then you need to find new markets. And what happens in here is you're trying to move so fast you run into the fog, meaning your 3 pillars aren't aligned. And so it gets you into trouble. Also, you have to worry about the chasm, meaning once you get past those people who are no-brainer customers, what happens when you get into the early majority? But you hit the knee and then you grow. Now, you can harvest any time in here. You don't necessarily have to harvest at the end. If you have a good beta, you can harvest. And why? Because a corporation, it's cheaper for them to buy you than for them to do it themselves. So keep that in mind. This is a psychology of the startup curve. You get excited, then novelty wears off, then you're in the trough of sorrow. Oh my God, what have I done to myself? But this is the emotions that startups go through. Professor Chavez calls this the 6 functions. We call it 3 pillars, and this is the basis of what this class is going to be about: strategy, marketing, product development. Now, some people say you have to become a company in 3 years. Well, a lot of successful companies have been able to do that. However, there's been a lot of companies that haven't done that and have been successful. Tesla, everybody talks about how fast Elon Musk moves. But Tesla got started in 2003. This company, and it wasn't around 2016 they started becoming profitable. The one thing Musk had was cash. Lam Research, David Lam hit a chasm, and he changed some of the features of his etching equipment, and then that company went public. Under Armour, Travis Kalanick didn't pay himself for 6 years. And Gilead Sciences, who came up with the cure for hepatitis C, which is one of the biggest diseases in the world. And what happens with pharma companies is it could take you 10 years before you harvest. On the other hand, there are companies that hang around. See, startups are really good about hanging around. They live off the land. They conserve their money, but they never really go anywhere. Cube Technology, the flat panel startup, I quit long before it went under, but after 11 years and no product. Integrated Sensing Systems. It was still running last I knew of, but it's kind of funny. Originally, they called themselves Silicon Integrated Sensing Systems. That's what I said they should call themselves, so they'd be sissies. But originally, they called themselves ISIS. You can imagine how they had to change their name. But they could never come up with a product, so they just became a foundry service. And Candescent Technologies. I'm getting these mixed up. This is my power cell company. This was my flat panel company. $450 million raised and no product. And as you can see, they were around for 14 years. Progress and speed is a pretty good indicator of what you're doing. You see companies spinning in place with the same problem, they're ready to go under. And so in a sense, there is a window. Here are the 24 steps. I won't go through them. You have the textbook. Now, we're not going to go in order, but what's good about the 24 steps is they tell you how to do things. And that's why I have you read the book, because it'll tell you, like, how to do cost of customer acquisition or look at what is a business model. The military does it according to what they call TRL. And so it's about readiness levels. And what the TRLs are really saying is 1 to 3, you're basically in the prototype research phase. 4 to 6, you are in the beta phase. And 7 to 9, you're actually in the gamma phase, which means, can you do this more than once? And some of the tech challenges, this is for tangible products. One of the biggest killers is, do you need manufacturing infrastructure? There was a solar company in Tempe. I told them, start working on your tools now, because they were talking about large format semi-tools, and I mean solar tools. Those are expensive, and I developed those kind of tools, and they take a long time. They didn't listen to me, and they're pretty much done for. Software products, it's about test, and also bandwidth, carry the number of users you really have. But it's critical to understand what your timelines are. Now, there are the gates. And what the gates are, what do businesses want to know about you? What's your purpose and mission? What problem are you solving? Why is now the right time for your product? Tell me what this product is. Who are you going up against? What kind of market are you going to get into? Who's going to pull this off? How are you going to make money? And finally, do you have a digital strategy? How are you going to go out there and maintain your customer relations? And so these are the main things they're looking for. Can you answer these questions? Now, international, I would say one of the most important things about international is get somebody to help you who lives there. It's not a good idea to go it alone. I've seen a lot of companies get wiped out because of that. But there are additional challenges when you go international. Now, there have been a lot of bad predictions. Uber flopped in the Middle East. And it's because they found out people don't have credit cards. They just have cash. And so Uber didn't do well. FedEx had a tough time in Europe because people there don't work to live. Live to work like Americans do. They just work to live. And so, at FedEx, if you have a package that needs to be out there by 6 and it's 5:15, you get that package there. But their attitude is, hey, it's 5 o'clock, time to go home. And then the FedEx managers start yelling at them. And their attitude is, my family's more important. And then there's Walmart. And they did not do well in Europe at a lot of places because it's just too big. They like shopping at little shops. And so the megastore was just too big a leap for them. The landscape is about your 3 pillars and 3 objectives. Technology, how does it transform you, the value, and subsequently from that you come up with the ideation. Your pillars, product marketing and strategy. Once you understand all that, then you can pitch, and then you have to decide, do you want to cross the Rubicon? Meaning, now it's time to, most people do this as a side hustle. Now you have to see if you want to quit your job. How serious are you about this? Now, one thing we are going to do in this class is in entrepreneurship, there are a lot of sacred cows. There are a lot of sacred rules, and everybody says it, and they become buzzwords. Here's the problem. They don't work. And there's a lot of them. For example, fail faster. What kind of idiot said something like that? There is such a, forget about this new age hippy-dippy stuff. There is such thing as failure. No, in business, you do not get a ribbon for being in 21st place. And so why are you telling people to fail faster? I mean, literally think about what they're telling you. No, what you're trying to do is learn quicker. Just try it. Don't be afraid or whatever. Well, here's the problem in a startup. You have limited money. If you have limited money, you have to think deeply about how you're going to spend it when you make an attempt. Now, if it doesn't cost you anything, yeah, go ahead and try it. But if it's going to cost you something, then you need to think about it. This whole thing about just trying it, I don't know, I just feel like we're treating you like you're in 3rd grade or something like that. You know, go ahead, try the cookie. Entrepreneurial mindset. The entrepreneurial mindset is based on something they call the 7 C's. And so they emphasize all these C's. The problem with the 7 C's is that they can't change it in you. Like one of them is courage. How the hell are you going to give somebody more courage? The courage you have is the courage you have. Now in TEM 200, I address the real way of doing the entrepreneurial mindset. And that's that if you can look at something and problem solve and see a solution, then you're willing to challenge it. Because the risk is like this, and this is where your courage is. On the other hand, if you understand the problem, then the risk drops down here. Now I'll take a shot at it. Customer discovery comes first. It depends on your product. For example, you have a cure for COVID. Are you really going to spend a lot of time on customer discovery? Or are you going to spend more time on make sure the damn thing works? And that's the way to look at your 3 pillars. MVP. People have forgotten why they created MVP. Minimally viable product means your first product should be minimized as much as possible. And so it got started because engineers never want to quit. There's always something more they want to add or something to fix. And product development's just strung out way too long. So they came up with this idea of MVP. The problem is that it's created a mindset of doing the bare minimum. Tell me, with a new product, do you want the bare minimum? What if it takes 1 hour to add a new software feature? Oh no, we can't do it. It's outside of our MVP. Baloney, go ahead and add it. The thing is, Steve Jobs, probably the greatest marketer ever, said, you have no idea how a customer is going to respond until they engage your project. It is not about MVP, it's about ROI. If I add that feature, how much does it cost me? That is what you need to focus on. Not, oh no, let's do the bare minimum. Business model canvas, it's something worth doing once. We already talked about pivot. Marketing is why you fail. Let me tell you something. In Silicon Valley, all those companies that said, oh, it was the market. And I flat out said to one CEO, it wasn't the market, it's because you failed. I said, if you had delivered the module at the right size, the right weight, and the price that you promised, somebody would have bought that. There would have been interest in it. Instead, you came in with something twice as big, twice as heavy, and 5 times more expensive. That's why there was no market for it. Now, what W.P. Carey tells you to do. Yes, those cupcake stand people. They tell you to go out and talk to 50 customers. And a W.P. Carey marketing professor said, if it was up to me, I would have you talk to 100 customers. I'm like, oh my God. If you need to talk to 100 people, you don't know what you're doing. Here's the real truth about customer discovery. It is not a number. It is a process. If you can figure out how to do something in 10 people, do 10 people. If it takes you 100 people to figure it out, then talk to 100 people. But the problem is, by setting this goal of 50, people come up with lists and then they check it off. And all they end up doing is talking to 50 of the same people. And what good does that do you? No, you talk to you talk to a couple of people, and then you think about, okay, this is what they gave me. What more do I need? How do I need to change my process? And this is what will happen to you. You'll hit the gusher. And that's a person who'll get you. This person has contacts. This person knows potential customers. This person is willing to help you. That's what you're looking for. And in every time I've been in a startup, I've hit a gusher. And so that is your big challenge, how to find that person. Successful entrepreneurship is about execution. Do what you promise, and what do you deliver? So roadmaps guide you through entrepreneurship. A hot exit gives you an overall picture. 24 steps in lean startup. The business model in Canvas outlines how you operate and make money. And so in the next lecture, we'll go into morality and ethics. Okay, just because I can do this, should I really?